So this is probably going to go up on my YouTube page as well. Basically, the TLDR is Ian interviewed with venturebeat, and according to what I heard already, he had some pretty good stuff to say about the future of World of Warcraft, the design decisions, 9.2, that kind of stuff. But I wanted to read it myself and just give some thoughts and opinions on some of the stuff that was said here. I haven't read this yet, so this is going to be my first time reading through this. Maybe I should have read this first. However, we're just going to full send it. Okay, so the title of this is World of Warcraft director Ion Hazzikostas talks about the game's future and current soul searching. I mean, this is true. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's been going on just with the game as a whole. First paragraph starts off talking about the middle. World of Warcraft's in the middle of extraordinary times. The MMO will be turning 17 years old this month. Jesus. And Blizzard prepares the launch of a new patch looking to fix its own culture under the backdrop of a state investigation and sexual harassment issue. This comes as a surprise to no one. The sexual harassment issues and the state investigation and the probing and the lawsuit has been something that's been talked about at length for a while. The 9.2 patch, I think, has to be the 9.1.5 patch has to have the most stuff in it. But it has probably had to have been the least hyped patch I remember in recent history with just how much stuff it is changing. It feels like it's something that resonates with the player base is that it almost feels like it's too little too late for a lot of the stuff that has happened in Shadowlands just as a whole. Let me make this a little bit bigger. All right, so first header, changing the game. The question is, the World of Warcraft team has been changing and removing some of the game's emotes and art. What's the thought process behind some of these changes? Okay, so for context, for those who don't know, I think this is probably something that most people are going to already know about. World of Warcraft has been changing some things such as like artwork in Karazhan. They've been changing some like zone names. They've been changing some NPC names, just some artwork in Karazhan. It's just like a bunch of random stuff like that, right? And they released a statement that I would highly recommend you go and read, basically stating, and I can't summarize this well enough. You should definitely go read it for yourself if you haven't read it. They basically released a summary stating that they are going to be looking to change the game and making it something that they are more comfortable with themselves on an internal basis and not necessarily something that is it's not necessarily just for the players. I mean, it's for everybody, right? Ian's response is, as we said in, I think, a brief blog or forum post, this has been a process been ongoing as a result of an internal period of self-reflection over the last few months. These are changes that are coming from the team as a whole. Yeah, I mean, he's basically trying to summarize like what they said in the post. One thing that came up there, pieces at our game that over the course of 17 plus years now, we're not necessarily the products of a diverse or inclusive range of voices, and that did not necessarily reflect the perspective of our current team and many of our players. I think that something that the players have to understand is that it is okay for the designers to have a difference in opinion for some of the things that should be created in this game. And at the same time, like, this is something that nobody, like, realistically, there's no reason that this is where you should, this is not the hill that you should die on in terms of like what doesn't sit right with you for the game. I think that like some of the /flirt stuff was definitely out of line. You can make arguments to like one way or the other that like it doesn't really matter. It's already in the game. Why not just leave it? But at the same time, if it's like something that these people aren't comfortable with, then like it's going to be okay just as a whole. Ultimately, it's not, if the things are being changed and they don't affect you, it's not about you. And I think that that's something that you have to know is like, you may think that it's just like something that you don't like because, oh, why are they changing this? They could have, okay, one of the most common complaints is that they could have spent development time on other things, and that's just completely not true. It's not exactly how that works. Straight up, if they're changing it and you don't understand why they're changing it, it's not for you. And that's how it is. And so that's just how it goes. Like I think that this in particular, this shit about World of Warcraft changing like the art and the slash flirt and stuff like that has gotten a lot of community backlash that I feel like is very unwarranted. And I think that this is just like something that if they are stuck with things in the game that they aren't comfortable with, then why the fuck don't they change it? And it's just like they're not even going out trying to virtue signal. They weren't even like tooting their own horn about this stuff. This is not some virtue signaling shit. This is them trying to make a game that they're more comfortable with. And ultimately, it's going to be I do genuinely think it's going to be a better thing for the game long term. And it's just like Ian says here, it's just like what we did was just set up a process internally for folks across the team, as well as sourcing from feedback from the community as a whole to flag pieces of the game for review, whether it's old quests or specific lines. As a random example, there were dozens of jokes and references made a dozen years ago about how feminine male blood elves were, mistaking male blood elves for women, just poking fun at that in not necessarily good-spirited way. And I think that that's like something that, okay, yeah, I mean, it happens, and it's something that, like, yeah, it was a part of the game back in 2008. It may have been, I don't want to say it was a different time because that's not exactly what I mean, but it's like it was there at a different point in WoW's history. At the same time, it being removed is not going to impact how the game is played. And it's not about taking a joke. It's literally not about taking a joke. It's about people not feeling comfortable with it in the current state of the world, and it's not about you. Literally, that is how it is. And it's not a big deal. Play the fucking game. All right, what is the community's changes to these? What is the community's reaction to these changes been? Right, holy fuck. Mixed. Some of its confusion changes started to be seen before we explained why we were doing what we were doing. There's a range of folks, and you have folks seeing this as a political or unwelcome, just focus on making a fun game. I don't care about this stuff. On the other end, there are those who've expressed concern that we're almost doing this as a smokescreen rather than tackling hard issues, and we're just changing that some words in a game. This isn't an or, it's an and we understand that we're not fixing systemic injustice by changing emote in World of Warcraft, but why we're doing this in while we're working on a larger cultural unity and diversity and safety issues and more. Okay, I think that this is totally fine. Like, it's as I said, they don't have to make some like grandstanding gesture. It's not an or, it's an and. They are also going to make a fun game for players, but they need to also be able to, they don't need to, but like they are going to also be making a game that feels inclusive for players. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like, as I said, it's not necessarily about you. And it's what was it? Hold on, I had a point that I wanted to say, but I can't remember exactly what it was. Oh, yes. What was I going to say? Here it is. Changes start to be seen before we explain why we were doing what we were doing. I think that this is one of the biggest issues with WoW, just as a general rule. Not like a this is a problem with this specific issue. This is just like a general rule. World of Warcraft has this problem where they will make changes and make the changes before they explain why they're doing what they're doing. And then of course, the changes will eventually get data mined in some way, which is it's not an issue of data mining. It's an issue of like World of Warcraft needs to be more communicative with the changes that they're making in the future and be able to explain that to players. And players also have to be able to take that as at face value and be able to be okay with them. Because I feel like a lot of the times there are some things that you are not allowed, but like there are some things that like there's going to be disagreements on things in the long-term creation of the game. Not just this. I'm speaking broadly here. Not just this, but there are things that there are going to be disagreements about, but there needs to be some like level of understanding that there are always going to be disagreements between both of the player bases. But at the same time, there is a level of communication that should be afforded from the World of Warcraft team that needs to be presented. Not before there are changes that are made, but like with changes that are currently being made. All right. You mentioned how some people say, why do this instead of that? One thing that they mentioned is tackling in-game toxicity. Can you talk about what Blizzard is doing to combat this inside the game? Oh my god. Okay. Damn, this is an interesting one. I don't even know how to feel at this. For many people, their unpleasant, their painful experiences or painful WoW experiences aren't just a result of a line of NPC, but something that was said to them in party chatter and jokes, or they saw in general chat. Otherwise, we've been working on improving our handling on all fronts. We've been consulting with the Overwatch team and our broader shared tech groups and machine learning. Better catch a lot of these things in real time as opposed to relying on a very manual report driven process. The manual report driven process was bad, by the way. That's what WoW was built around 17 years ago, and it's sort of process that maybe works well with someone who's spamming sales or whatever in Orgrimmar, but doesn't work so well whenever it's a one-off hateful comment that's just written to somebody or something said in party chat or dungeon. I think that this is just like a straight up win. Like they've I think that there are things that they've changed where it's like account wide ignore. I want to say is something that has been added. I think that this is fine. Like account wide ignore, and it's like if you're getting hateful comments from people, you don't want them logging onto second accounts and then spamming you or logging into a different character and whispering you. There should definitely be able to be an account wide ignore. I think that this is just like a this is fine. Like I don't think that anybody's ever going to be like, oh, this is a negative thing. This is I haven't ever had this shit happen to me. I don't really want this shit happen to me. I think that this is like one of those things that it's like, I don't really want people messaging me hateful stuff. And so, yeah, I'm down. And while I may not have it, fuck it. Like, I don't want other people to have that either. You mentioned making the team more diverse. Can you talk more on that effort? Oh, this is a very... I'm surprised that this... I heard other things about like end game decisions. I'm surprised that this is started out so strong, and Ian spoke so openly about like the lawsuit stuff. Interesting, and like diversity in the scene. This is something that has been a goal of ours for years, and we have a number of women leaders and people of color across the team. There are areas where we look to continue for a team that represents the players we want to play our game, and part of why diversity is so important that I and we as a team firmly believe that it makes a better game and makes a better product. We're trying to make a game that is not for a niche audience. We're trying to make a game that's played by millions of people around the world of all genders, ethnics, sexual orientations, backgrounds, or in general to make to better understand and have connection with a range of perspectives. Yeah, I think that is totally reasonable. I mean, that's why it's important to hire diverse, just diverse people in your field on any given moment, right? It's just at any given moment. It's why diversity in like workplaces, for regardless of what your occupation is important, because it's like, it's not about just being able to make a product that is engaging for other diversities, but it's about the ability to be able to get like others' opinions and others' values, and just be able to get diversity of thought and diversity of opinion on things that you don't really know much about. I mean, yeah, that diversity isn't just skin color and gender, though. Exactly, I agree with that. Diversity is also about like cultural upbringing. It's about like where you come from. It's about what you've experienced. It's about just who you are. And diversity isn't just about like things you can see about a person. It's also about I mean, there's a lot of diversity, right? Like culturally, I'm a white American male, and I'm going to be very culturally different than a white Dutch male, even though we're both white men. But at the same time, like there's a lot of different diversity that needs to be happening. Just, I mean, it's not just with WoW. I mean, this is a very standard conversation that I hope is happening in many places. We recognize that the game industry has certain skews. Yes. Male dominated is the obvious one, especially in design. And while we need to work harder to build and find the qualified candidates who are out there, we can't just open up a position, take the first couple dozen resumes, look through them, and pick someone out of that pile, because we may just get a dozen of white male resumes. And it's not that we wouldn't hire someone who's qualified for the job. We will, but we will be limiting the range of perspectives that come to our team. That's how it is. I mean, it's like, if you're looking at equally qualified people, at some point, if you have just a bunch of white men in your office, if you have then a minority of any type, then yeah, I mean, they're the same qualification, then yeah, take them. Diversity isn't just a WoW issue. This doesn't surprise me. Diversity isn't a WoW issue. I hope this is happening everywhere. Hopefully, I think it's something that is important. Diversity in the gaming and tech industry is a huge problem, though. I do agree. Definitely fact. What kind of changes have you noticed inside of Blizzard in the last few months? Hello, Cat. There are conversations happening at all levels, and I can speak to what we're doing on the WoW team. There are changes that have happened at a Blizzard level and Activision Blizzard King level. Depending on the structures of what we're talking about, a lot of what I just talked about is one of the things that we can act on most directly in terms of our hiring, our reviewing, and all the job descriptions we post. Have a range of folks looking at them. I think that I'm not in a position to speak on any of this. This is just like, I think that I'm not in a position to speak on any of this. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's that it doesn't involve me. I mean, this is just like a Blizzard. This is like a Blizzard thing, right? This is like an internal thing. As somebody who doesn't work there, it's not me. Bert should do all the hiring. Cats only. All right. What is morale like for the WoW team right now? Holy shit. Sometimes you guys take a bit of a beating anyways, but it's been amplified lately. What is it like feeling inside the studio? Okay. Holy shit, yes, they have been taking a beating. I'm interested to see what they say about this. Ups and downs, I think it's been very clearly a tough stretch, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of earnest conversations, disappointment, anger, all of that. But at the end of the day, what the team, as we work on these issues, we're also here to make a great game, and that's what's brought by everybody to Blizzard, that's what's brought by everybody to the WoW team, and while we improve happen. A lot of the efforts that led us to what went into 9.1.5 were really exciting and invigorating moments for the team on top of our standard plan set of features for 9.15 like Legion Time Walking or other updates. Let's take some time and just have almost a little hackathon. Do whatever you want to do and that you think will make the game more fun. Pitch your ideas. Let's go in and find areas that have been in long time pain points for the community. Whether it's old raids being frustrating to farm, solo, or what else, and let's solve them. And let's, as a team, just have it whole fanned out. Came back with ideas and pitches and born off of the creative. As we reflect on the tough times and work, move past them. Okay, so I think that, okay, for the record, I think that what 9.1.5 is actually something that if this has worked for them, where they have this hackathon, do what you want to do, and then like they kind of fan out and then just create different stuff. Shit, I mean, it's worked. I mean, 9.1.5 looks like it's going to be one of the better patches in a while. Unfortunately, I don't think that it's something that interests a lot of players, unfortunately, just due to how staunch of a turn Shadowlands really took towards the beginning. 9.0 was like really long and that kind of thing. I mean, so 9.1.5 won't be like saving the game or anything right like that, right? The game is still like, in my mind, in a plateau, maybe a little bit of a lull, at least until next expansion. But I do think that the creative process for 9.1.5, what they are doing, the content that they are, not the content, but like what they're trying to bring here is pretty good. I'm not opposed to it. Hopefully it should have happened sooner. It will be an amazing alt patch. Agree with that. Hopefully in the I think that for me, it's not about 9.1.5 necessarily. It's a lot about like looking into the future. I hope that it does improve the future of design of World of Warcraft as a whole. And yeah, I think that that's my thoughts on the general thing here. The creative energy and expression. We're here to make a game for a community that's going to bring joy, bring happiness to people around the world, and we reflect on the times and work to move past them. We're also driven by motivated by that and doing our underlying purpose. I think that something that also needs to be talked about. He kind of dodged this here. He talked about how they're looking to update WoW and how that, like, the morale of the whole entire situation is being turned into like a positive thing for design. I think that one of the things that he either intentionally or unintentionally misses here is the communication element that is completely lacking with the World of Warcraft scene right now, which I think is what has been holding it back a lot. They have been taking a bit of a beating and it's not just don't bully developers online, don't bully people online. It's fucking weird. But they need to be better about communication. And I think that I mean, it's not like, oh yeah, they deserve to be bullied for doing these things. It's more like they should try to have better communication with their player base and be more community involved. And he uses this term community here. That creative energy, that expression, we're here to make games for a community, and that's going to bring joy and bring happiness to people around the world. And I hope that he truly means this. Yes, I hope that he truly means this, and I hope that they really knuckle down and think about this whenever they're making things in the future. The patch is a big improvement, but it's a low point for a lot of the player base due to how poor 9.0 and 9.1 were, and 9.0.5 was. The important points. Not the important points, but the points that I feel like I can talk on better. Because the other stuff I was actually not ready to get involved with. But here we are. The future of World of Warcraft. There are a lot of quality of life improvements coming to 9.1.5, and a lot of people are excited about those things, but a lot of people have expressed some frustration that they didn't happen sooner. Facts, 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 facts. Do you think that there is something in the feedback loop that Blizzard can improve? Hold on, I got something. Twitter.com. One moment. Give me a second. Okay, so do you think there is something in the feedback loop that Blizzard can improve? So people meme about this a lot, but I think that there is some real truth into this. Announce next expansion and promise to listen to feedback. Players give constructive feedback about core systems. Disagree and promise to balance it all perfectly down the line. Point 1, adjust according to popular demand. Start adjusting it based on feedback initially provided during the alpha. Fix the expansion. This is a meme, but this is like real. Like I have felt this 3 expansions in a row now, where it's like, and this feels almost at a line as like currently unacceptable. I don't like being treated like this. It's a meme that was proven true, right? There's definitely a lot of truth into this, even though it was something that is supposed to be a little bit touch and go. And so I'm interested to see like what he says here. And if they recognize that this is something that is a problem, they're willing to apologize about it. They're willing to like look at it moving into the future and then kind of fix the problems. I just accidentally hit the button. Send me to the top. Where am I? There we go. Absolutely, we can always do better at listening to feedback. We can also do better at communicating, and we've heard that feedback, but aren't necessarily acting on it for whatever reason or taking under advisement and keeping an eye on it. Feedback that, as the community pointed out, we've heard on many fronts, and going back to beta, in some areas we were wrong. The community said, hey, we don't think that conduit energy is going to be... And the community said, hey, we think that this conduit energy is going to be this frustrating system, and it's not going to have the effects that you hope it has. Our intent was to make something similar to Classic WoW, respec costs, and that would have been a friction that made you take these choices a little bit more seriously, but ultimately doesn't lock you permanently. In practice, it just ended up being something that players were chafed against, and we heard that from them, and we should have changed our minds on there sooner. Oh my god. Okay. I don't like that. I really don't like this initial response. Let's keep reading, I guess. In other areas, it's about watching the mainstream of the WoW player base, the broad range of the player base evolve, and watching how they're playing the game, and what we hear from them are more than just folks who are content creators or high-end raters or PvPers, and we know that who we know have a specific playstyle, but one of the challenges in designing WoW is that there are a dozen different playstyles. This is true. Dude, this is... Okay. Side note, people who comment on videos and be like, oh, the 1% is ruining the game, you're about a buffoon, and you missed the point. They definitely do not design the game around the 1%ers of anything. Of anything. Wow. Like, they don't design the game around the 1%ers of PvPers. They don't design the game around the 1%ers of of literally just any part of this. So like, if you actually believe that, you're wrong. Many of them are not as vocal or prominently represented. So what we hear from people who are trying to do high-end rating and also push keystones who have to choose one covenant, not being able to choose two freely for the systems was very frustrating. And we understood that, and it wasn't surprising to us. We knew that if it was your orientation of the game and you're a min-max player, you're going to want to always be optimal. But as we articulated, the goal of the design team was that the core RPG choice, that feeling of that weighty decision of picking this path versus that path and having a different story that you experience versus what your friends experience, was going to provide a better experience for the majority of players. And over time, what we continued to hear was even those who initially appreciated that choice, the diversity of experience months into the game down the line, once they played through those stories and once they had set that, particularly on alts, they just too wanted the ease of change. And that led us to the place here. Why did it take so long? Holy. All right, let me keep reading. This is long. But what a lot that goes into 9.5 isn't just a one-off. It's a reflection on us changing a lot of underlying philosophies that have motivated our approach to designing WoW. A lot of these things, like I mentioned, regarding conduit energy, are outgrowths of lessons that we were taught to us by our predecessors, by the founders and the leaders of the team, about the importance of meaningful choice and the importance of preserving character investment. That may have led us to not being so friendly to alt gameplay and people's ability to get caught up on their alts. And the reality of the situation is that the way that people play the game has evolved, and what was the right answer for the WoW player base and for the game 15 years ago may not be the right answer today. There's some stubbornness, but clinging on to those old lessons, some things are hard to let go of whenever your training and your education as a designer and a developer on the team has led you to having these things instilled in you. Okay. The 9.1.5 reflects a shift to more alt accessibility, more catch-up, more sensitivity, and respect for players' time, trying to look at what sorts of activities are going to be interesting once or twice, but maybe less interesting when you have to do them more than that. Let's not make you do them more than that. Versus which activities are part of the core repeatable loop, like running dungeons or PvP at max level. These things we want people to get into without as many hurdles. They have to clear the way, and that sort of approach is going to motivate how we approach our next patch in Shadowlands, which we'll talk about in the not too distant future, and expansions to follow. Okay, 1 second. I hope that what he says is true. I don't really have much to say about this necessarily. I think that this is like, it is correct. Like what he is saying is exactly what people want to hear, but I hope I just ultimately hope it's true, is what I think about this whole entire thing. They were very stubborn, and they were clinging on to these old, very archaic systems, and people just want to be able to do the replayability that they want to do, whether it be PvP, dungeons, raids, the fun replayable stuff. For a lot of people, the grinding of artifact power or artifact knowledge or renown or whatever else, that's not fun. There are certain things in this game that people are okay with grinding, and typically that's like gear. Most of the time, players are okay with regrinding gear on some certain level, but whenever you have to regrind 3, 4, 5 like full systems, you're just like, why? Why even play a second character? And I don't want to have a second main. Like, I want to have an alt. Like, and I think that one of the things that has been missed a lot is World of Warcraft has forced you to have a bunch of mains as opposed to having alts. And so I don't have a lot to say about this. I think that what he said here is the correct position to take. I think that ultimately, I hope 9.1.5 is a spot where this is a bit of a turning point for them. And I hope that they really try to understand players' position whenever they're giving feedback, as opposed to like, okay, so it's important to note, like, if you're giving feedback or getting feedback, there's two sides to this. So whenever you're giving feedback from your position, right? And you see it from your angle, and you're like, oh, okay, so I play a balanced route. I'm going to be favoring Night Fae. That means I'm going to have these 3 other covenants in my dungeons to be able to effectively be able to do these dungeons, and that they have these covenant specific dungeon buffs in these dungeons, and like I don't really have the ability to be able to swap, right? And you're just like, that could make me less valuable in a dungeon, and I don't want that. I would rather just be as valuable as I am. And then, like, so whenever you give feedback, you're like, okay, I don't really like these covenant-specific dungeon buffs. I really don't like my ability to not be able to covenant swap, because you are also gating these behind so many of these restrictions, whether it be dungeon buffs, whether it be I needed to porting over Painsmith beams. Like, there's no reason that like a Resto Shaman couldn't necessarily play okay, Venthyr. There's no reason that a Resto Shaman couldn't necessarily play Venthyr for that fight, and then just swap his Covenant back after you kill Painsmith on Prague with that fucking line of spikes, right? There's no real reason that they couldn't do that, but at the same time, you can't swap your Covenants, and like, there was like a lot of friction, right? So you're giving feedback, and they hear the feedback, and they're like, we want this to feel like a meaningful choice, and we hope that the players respect and understand that this meaningful choice is going to be important for them. And then the players who are like, I really don't want this, and it's just like there's a lot of friction between the two sides here, and I think that friction is like, I hope is going to be alleviated in the future, because the developers are definitely allowed to say your feedback. I'm hearing it. I don't agree. I'm taking the game in a different direction, but at the same time, it's also like, it feels like there is very few things that are listened to on a core systems level. So whenever there's feedback given about some things, it's typically like, and the feedback that is taken is typically going to be on things that aren't on a core systems level. But whenever you're giving feedback about things such as shards of domination or covenant swapping or conduit energy or stuff like that, there is almost never is feedback walked. I don't want to say taken. That's not true, because that's actually not true. But it's never walked back in a way that it's like, it is walked back on some of the other situations, and I really just hope that I hope that their philosophy is actually changing. I don't think that I have too much more to say. I just hope that it gets better, and I hope that it makes a better game for the players. And ultimately, like, dude, they're gonna fuck up again. Like, it's how it is. Like, they're going to fuck up again. They're gonna make a system that people hate. It's how literally every video game works. They're going to fuck up again. They're going to make a system that people hate, but they need to be able to learn from it. They need to be able to apologize about it, and they need to be able to fix it in the future. And I think that that's something that's been lacking a lot. But what Ion Hazzikostas says right here is that he understands, and he's like, and I don't know if he necessarily apologizes. However, what he's saying is that he's understanding and that he's going to be fixing it moving forward. And they're saying that they fucked up, and man, I fucking hope that they fix it. Talking about community miracle rockets to maybe stubbornness, is there something like cross-faction rating a bit more on the radar as a possibility these days? Damn, what a banger question. That's a good question to follow that one up with. All right, I'd say that this is a bit more on the radar. Yes, that one of these areas where there are a lot of things to solve and a lot of things to figure out and make it happen. But at the end of the day, if Jaina and Thrall are working alongside each other in the raid, why can't Alliance and Horde players also work alongside each other in that raid, especially whenever we know it's going to solve a lot of the social problems that are people grappling with, particularly trying to keep a high-end Alliance guild together in North America or Horde one in Oceania? Yeah? I don't think... I think that everybody's just like, dude, okay. I think that the disconnect with this game, I feel like the disconnect with this game a lot of the times is that, like, This is from my perspective. Let's be very clear. This is from my perspective. I think the disconnect is like the developers feel like people play this game almost exclusively for the RPG elements of the whole entire thing. And while I think like the RPG elements and like the storytelling and all of that are important, I think that there's like a massive separation between the story and between like how people play the game on like a level, on like a different level, like on a fundamental level. People are playing this game and they're like, oh, they're walking around Korthia, right? And they're walking around and they're like, all right, let me grab this mob, right? And they tag the mob, and then they see an alliance guy across the way and they're like, oh shit, there's a worgen and he tags the same mob as you. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to pick up the fucking loot off the same mob. Like, he's a worgen, right? Like, all right, I'm gonna go loot this fucking boar. I should be able to get my loot from it. Same thing in Raid, where it's like, okay, faction leader Jaina on my right, faction leader Thrall on my left. Get to the portal, Gul'dan is finished. All right, we're fighting these bosses, and it's just like, I see both factions are represented here. Why can't we just raid with these people? And I feel like there's a disconnect. I think that you can tell a story from like a different perspective from Alliance and Horde, but why can't I play with the people of a different faction? I'll never really understand, and I hope that they do change this. I think that there's just like a lot of friction between like how you're actively playing the game, and then like they feel like there's going to be such a massive disconnect from the story that they're trying to tell when there really isn't that much of a disconnect. I feel like they should be able to make it happen. I think a lot of it's like, I think it just makes for a better game. Straight up, I think it just makes for a better game. You make it happen. Like, there are things that you can sacrifice to make for a better game. Yeah, that's how it goes. All right, you talked about 9.2 a bit, but beyond that, should we expect a 2.5 or a 0.3 for this expansion cycle, or will be 0.2 be it, and then looking forward toward the next thing? We'll be talking about that a bit more, about the conclusion of Shadowlands in detail in the future. Yes, 9.2 is coming. You'll be hearing about that more soon. We do have more planned after that, but it's hard to say too much more without almost spoiling some of the story that's going to come. We'll have a lot of details on that soon, but we want to be able to explain it in the full context of what 9.2 is going to be. This is fine. They can do that. That is fine. Link to this page? Yes, you can. They're definitely allowed to say that. We've seen the story and setting for Warcraft get bigger and more cosmic. Some people like that and some people don't, but I guess I wonder, is it possible to go back, or is the genie out of the bottle as far as the size and the scope of what we're fighting? I don't think it is. Well, I don't know what it's necessarily referring to. The fact that we're fighting old gods, I guess. I guess the difference is like we used to fight pieces of shit like Hogger, and now we're fighting old gods, I guess is... Yeah, okay, here we go. I don't think it is. No, that's definitely feedback we want to hear as well. There are some people who like that escalation. We face the Titans and what comes next. Let's go through the whole cosmology. There are others who just miss being in an inn and help being an adventurer, a more humble scale at this point. WoW's protagonists are heroes. You've done a lot of stuff. You'll probably never go back being an anonymous adventurer in a forest, but Azeroth this is fine. This is just the story they're telling. If you want to be a humble adventurer, go play New World, I think is my thoughts on it. Or go play Classic, right? Actually, I don't know. I think it's just a story that they decided that they want to tell. Like fighting your typical dragon versus a titan or old god all the time. Yeah, okay, dude. Yeah, in my mind, there's no discrepancy between fighting an old god versus fighting a massive fucking dragon. I mean, that's just my thoughts. I mean, I don't know. Can we not all be like the chosen one and so dumb? That's just a byproduct of the lore. I think that I don't really have a lot of I don't have a lot of context nor a lot of real like good takes on lore stuff. I am not somebody to be talking about lore. I'm very dumb when it comes to that. I think that as long as it, I don't know. I think as long as they make cool bosses and do cool things, I'm kind of down. I've always been very disconnected from lore since I started the game. All right, so this patch is adding Legion time walking. We're getting the mage towers back. Is the team thinking about more ways to bring back old content? It's a great question. All right, something that we're slowly working our way towards. There is a tremendous amount of content that needs to be, in many cases, manually retouched and updated to work this way. Things that we've done over years, like adding scaling to the old content, so that even now you can level 10 to 15 in any of the expansions instead of having a fixed linear path where you have to level all of it piecemeal. Things like time walking, there are vehicles and steps that move us closer to a world where we can make better use of all of what we've built as it suits our story. But we're not quite there yet. And we want to keep expanding those efforts and pulling more raids into our time walking system, and a lot of discussion about what outdoor time walking might look like. Whether there are periods where there will be exciting stuff that make you want to return to Pandaria or Draenor. Specific storyline does title. Okay, interesting. Oh, okay. I mean, okay, so I understand what you're saying here. I think that as a whole, like they definitely they've gotten a lot of dungeon design. I think that they could absolutely for like modern players. This is from like a modern player thing. So there is some like casual stuff that he's referring to here, and then so this question's about Legion time walking. I'm gonna talk about more like Legion time walking. I think for the casual stuff, absolutely phenomenal that they retouched old zones. Absolutely phenomenal that you're able to level 10 to 50 through like wherever the fuck you want. As for like random time walking stuff, that's kind of cool too. I think that just as a general rule, they could absolutely be able to bring back some of the old dungeons and retune them, retool them, like one or two a patch, and just have them like implement the new seasonal affix in them and just keep them fresh. And I think that that's something that they absolutely could do. It would be kind of cool. It would allow us to have a little bit more. It would allow them to be able to reuse old content, but kind of keep it fresh for us. I think that just as a general rule, their old content kind of sucks. Like, I've never had any reason to go back to old Dalaran. I've never really had a reason to go back to new Dalaran. I never really had a reason to. I don't think I've gone into BFA since I left that expansion. I haven't been in my garrison in 40 years. Like, all these things are I think it's just like a state of current WoW. People talk about how they want like old content to continue to be fresh. I think that how they're currently building on old stuff and using it as, I think that's something like that people need to realize, that the old content is old for a reason. And that WoW is such like an end game focused game now, where everything is focused on being max level. And I think that they recognize that now. I think that it took them a very long time to recognize that, but I think like the revamping of like the leveling systems, and I think that all of that kind of stuff really was like a turning point for that. I think that there is a way to make old content be able to be reused in current formats while not sending us back to the fucking Shadow Realm where we have to play that content in any way again. And I think that time walking is like a pretty good balance of that. I think that time walking is a decent balance of that. I think that if they added like one or two dungeons per patch from like old Mythic Plus dungeons, that'd be cool. I think that like the Ulduar and the raid time walking stuff was kind of nice. It's not like that big of a deal, but I think it's kind of cool. And I think that they need to continue to be making fresh content. That's also very important. All right, you mentioned earlier that the game's almost 17 years old now. Is there a point where it's just too old with too many story threads and too many systems, and a reboot becomes too exciting to ignore? So this is the WoW 2 question. I don't think so. We're always thinking about what the future of WoW, not just a year or two from now, but in like 5 to 10 years. Within this world, there are plenty of stories that we'll still have to tell, places to visit, and improvements to make. We want to learn lessons and keep building on these foundations. In a lot of ways, having 17 years of content is a huge strength. Yeah, true. But we also need to be mindful of managing the overall bloat in our systems. That's kind of what some of the efforts we did in Shadowlands, like squishing down and streamlining leveling, so that a new player coming aboard can can play through a modern starting experience, play through Battle of Azeroth, and jump right into Shadowlands rather than being overwhelmed by 120 levels and a whirlwind tour of 15 years worth of content. Agree, hard agree. But even as we curate and maintain what the experience is, we have this wealth to draw upon, and our intent is to keep evolving upon those foundations. We'll remove some of the parts that are old and crusty. Ion Hazzikostas is talking about crust. Yes, this is what I was hoping to read whenever I woke up today. Yes, of course, old crust. I think that this is correct. I mean, like, it's a good thing. Ultimately, the exciting and enticing part of World of Warcraft is its in-game focused content. Trying to get new players into that as quickly as possible is going to be something that, it just is what it is. All right, so I think my biggest takeaway for like the modern WoW player is something like this is probably the most important thing that he says. A lot of what goes on in 9.5 isn't a one-off. It's a reflection on us changing a lot of the underlying philosophies that have motivated our approach to designing WoW. I hope that this is true. I really hope that this is true. It's a lot of it's something that they've kind of burned the WoW community so many times in a row that it's hard to trust them on a lot of things. But like what he says here is something that is correct. Like, and I do really hope that I do seriously hope that he means what he says here. What is this? I don't think that's where he. I don't think he's wrong, but I don't think that that's what. That's not what the. That's not what the. Not what the essence of the question was asking. All right. Anyways, overall, I think this is a good interview. I think that what he said in regards to a lot of things was fairly encouraging. Does it fix WoW? Not right now. Not 9.1.5. But it does fix WoW in the future if they do maintain these crucial points where yeah, if they keep focused on like trying to make the game more accessible, more playable for their player base, then yeah, that's absolutely a good thing as a whole. I think they just have to keep keeping their. I just think they need to keep their players in mind more whenever they're designing systems that may cause a lot of friction, a lot of pushback with like the people that are actively playing their game on a day-to-day basis. Because it's not always about just like there are some things you're down to do. Like I'm down to farm more gear on my shitty alt hunter, my rat hunter. Like it's fine. I'm okay with doing Mythic Plus, and I'm okay with doing raids and PvP to farm gear. If that's the content I want to do specifically, but I'm not really. I don't really want to embark in like a 6-week fucking journey to do 100 stories and 1,000 quests to play just a character that I have to ultimately gear at the same level as my main. I don't really want that. They just need to be like, it's not. They need to be catering to the people who play their game, and I think that like, I think they've been doing a bad job of doing that. I think there's been a lot of catering to like philosophies that they were taught or like idealistic views. I think that they definitely can be looking forward to some of these things, and I hope it changes. I don't mean like cater to the 1%. I just mean like make a game that your player base wants to play, as opposed to a game that like every single time people say something or like, yo, when are they fixing covenant swapping? Never. All right. That's going to be it. And we're good to go. All right, goodbye, YouTube.